So Detroit, the Motor City, is on the cusp of bankruptcy, or is declaring bankruptcy. Will the government bail them out, and should they? Okay. A few years ago, they bailed out the automakers. I see two sides of that, although it's probably something that had to happen because even though this country doesn't import the cars or build the number of cars that it may have, it probably does in volume, but the percentage of the market, because automobiles are so much more frequent than they were every generation, becomes more frequent. What I mean is that although there were cars in the early 1900s, not everybody had one. By the 1950s and 60s, almost every family in this country owned at least one automobile. Two-car homes became more common in the 60s and 70s. You know, both my parents had their own car. But I did have friends that lived in one-car families, and that's whatever, that's their prerogative. But these days there are most families, it seems, that as soon as their eldest kids come of age, they have a vehicle also. And sometimes there's more than 2 cars per family before you get to the eldest kids. So what's my point? My point is that there are more cars than there ever have been. And that's the way of the world today. That's fine. So what does that mean? That means that Detroit is the Motor City, that the largest 3 companies in the United States, being General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler. My growing up years, Chrysler incorporated Chrysler, Dodge, and Plymouth. In 2000 or 2001, Plymouth was discontinued. General Motors would be Chevrolet, GMC Trucks, Buick, Pontiac, Cadillac, Oldsmobile, and Saturn. Oldsmobile was discontinued, I think, in 2005, and Pontiac and Saturn were just discontinued the year before last with the government buyout that Saturn and Pontiac would be discontinued, and they would use only the 4 lines that sold the best, which would be Chevrolet, GMC Trucks, Cadillac, and Buick. And Ford would encompass Ford, Lincoln, and Mercury, and I believe they've decided to discontinue Mercury as a way of cutting overhead. So there aren't as many lines of automobiles as there used to be, and maybe that's fine because you could argue that Chrysler really never needed Plymouth for many years because it was the same as a Dodge. Okay? And it is. There's really not much difference between a Dodge and a Plymouth when you see the two next to each other. And while there's similarities in some of the other models, all the automakers more or less do the same thing. I don't want this to be the point of this blog. But Detroit comes to mind when I discuss General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler as manufacturing companies. And it seems that Detroit itself, for the last several decades, has become a dangerous city. It's become a place that people don't go to hang out. People don't want to, even if they work for the automakers, they end up immediately, they live in a suburb area. They don't live in Detroit itself for the most part. And therefore, properties aren't having taxes paid on them, and whole blocks are destroyed from what I understand. I haven't visited Detroit or investigated this, and I'm really not somebody who could help anyhow. But should the government restore Detroit? And then if it does, do they not own those blocks? Do they not? Something that's occurred to me is it's possible that an investor could buy some of those blocks that are dilapidated, but they would either A, put in industry, or they'd put in homes or condominiums or something like that to property that collects rent, or they would divide, maybe they would subdivide and try selling new houses, but I don't know if it's even feasible to put new development in what's currently a high crime area, because I don't know that high crime would quickly move out of the area while development is going on, or even if it makes development even possible. That might be something to look into, but that's what's on my mind, is what's going to happen in the Motor City. And then what, how did it get that bad in the first place is one question, and the more important question right now is, how do you fix it? And I don't have good viable solutions to put into this video, but it would be good for further discussion if anyone wants to respond. Thank you.